Welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And on today's episode of Mom Street USA, we are revisiting a topic that we have visited several times over the course of our podcast, and that is lightning lanes. I thought we were maybe due for a refresher since some things have shifted and changed, and we talked about that a little bit with our rope drop and early entry episode. So I wanted to revisit lightning lanes and do a little bit of kind of a refresher course, a little tutorial, and then some Q&A as well with that. So that is the plan for today. And without further ado, I am going to go ahead and just jump in. It's a lot of information. I'm going to do my best to explain it in a way that makes sense and is kind of in the simplest terms. The good news is if you have been a listener for Mom Street USA, we just went over some abbreviations and terminology for all of the Disney booking process. And some of those you will hear me talk about tonight. So a refresher on that for a lot of you. But if you're brand new, welcome. I'm hoping to give you kind of a one-stop shop for your general overview when it comes to lightning lanes and to give you some additional information that may help you on an upcoming trip. So lightning lane is kind of the term that we use to overarchingly talk about what is formerly known as the Fast Pass system at Disney. So this is the system that allows you to wait in a shorter queue line for the rides at Disney World. Now, you will also hear the term lightning lane used at Disneyland. Tonight, we're really going to focus on Disney World. Disneyland is still operating under the former system, which was the Genie Plus system. So if you are familiar with that, that is Disneyland's system. We've gone over that. Nothing has really changed there. So feel free to scroll back a little bit in our episode list to check out information on Disneyland, because theirs is pretty much the same as what it was the last time that we spoke about it, which was maybe 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer ago. But be sure to check that out if you're looking for Disneyland. For Disney World, let's talk about lightning lanes and multi-pass. So the newest system at Disney World is called the Lightning Lane Multi-Pass. And this pass will get you on about 90% of the rides at the Disney parks. This is the pass that you purchase to shorten those wait times. And the price for this pass does vary by day and by park. So Disney releases that information about 3 weeks out from your eligible date to book, which we'll talk about in just a few. So you can kind of see it ahead of time, but not super far in advance. The prices generally range anywhere from $20 a day to $40 a day for the multi-pass price. So that is one part of the lightning lane system. The second part of your lightning lane system is the lightning lane single pass. The single pass will get you on one ride, and it's like an a la carte is how we've always kind of referred to it as when we're talking about lightning lanes. And that is an extra ride outside of multi-pass that you are paying an extra fee to be able to ride. These are your most popular attractions at every park for Disney World. There are 5 in this category. And again, with these as well, the prices vary by day, anywhere from $11 per day upwards of closer to $30 a day, depending on the attraction, depending on the day. And as far as what rides are which and all of that, we'll get into that here in a little bit. But before I jump into all of that, I don't necessarily want to overload you with that information right now. We're going to talk about how to book and what that process kind of looks like. So when Disney released this lightning lane system, they brought back an old feature of FastPass from the past that allowed you to book ahead of time. So what that means is if you are a guest that is staying on Disney property, so at a Disney resort, or the Swan, the Dolphin, or Shades of Green, which is the military resort that is at Disney, any of those options, you will be able to pre-book your initial 3 multi-pass rides 7 days before your check-in day. And you will be able to book for the entire length of your stay up to 14 days. So if you have a trip that's longer than 14 days, you are going to have to split your lightning lane purchasing into two, so that way you can get the rides that you want on those later days in your trip. Now, if you are someone who is staying off property, not at a Disney resort, then you will be able to pre-select your multi-pass rides 3 days out from your first park day. So the day that you select for your ticket to become active, that is your first park day. So 3 days before that is when you are going to be able to book. And you will be able to book for the amount of days that are on your ticket. So if you've got a 3-day ticket, you will be able to book 3 days worth of lightning lanes. So that is kind of the overall aspect for how to book and when to book. Do keep in mind that if you are a guest that is visiting the parks, not from the United States. So you are coming from the UK, you are coming from Canada, Mexico, wherever it may be that is not from the United States. It gets a little tricky because they do not allow people that are outside of the US to do that pre-selection. But if you are someone who, let's say you're visiting a couple different locations in the US, you're going to be in the US before you head to the Disney parks. If you are in the US anytime 7 days before your trip, if you're staying on property, then you'll be eligible to book. So basically, as soon as you touch down in the US and you are within your eligibility window that I talked about earlier, international guests, you will be able to book then. So it gets a little tricky with that, but that is the official ruling when it comes to international guests. A couple things to note about your pre-selection for your booking, and I will go through all of this again. I'm going to do like a tutorial walkthrough and let you guys see kind of how it works. But just a couple notes before we get to that. Travel parties will be able to select your ride times before you check out. This again was a newer feature that they offered with the new multi-pass system. You can see and select all of your times before you purchase anything. So that is a really big benefit to this current system that is different from the previous system. And that also includes your single pass lightning lane times as well. So for both multi-pass and single pass, you will be able to view those times for the rides before you purchase. Just a quick note about your pre-selections. All pre-selected multi-pass attractions must be the same for each member of your travel party if you're planning to book together. So if you've got a party that's larger that maybe doesn't want to do all of the same rides, you're not going to be able to book all of them together. You can only book together people that are riding the same rides from your pre-selection. So that is really important when it comes to the ease and the ability to be able to book those lightning lanes on your eligibility morning. So keep that in mind. You kind of want to create separate groups if you need to when it comes to multi-pass. Single pass is a little bit easier to do if you're doing it separate, because you can just select down through. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. Do keep in mind that on the day of your park visit, you will become eligible to book additional rides as soon as you redeem your first multi-pass ride. So as soon as you tap into whatever your first selection was, you will be eligible to book another one. You can basically always hold 3 multi-pass rides at one time. Single pass are not included in that, so don't get that confused if you see that you've got single pass rides on your plans as well. The multi-pass rides are the ones that you're always going to be able to hold 3 at a time. Rides will sell out in that pre-selection time period, so you want to make sure that you have your kind of plan ready to go, so that way you can get what you want to get and you can get the best times, because you always want to do your best to get morning times to start, because that will allow you to utilize the money that you're spending on multipass to the full, ability that you have. Your times as you're booking will be held for 5 minutes as you finalize and pay, but you want to select those top priority rides. as soon as possible. 7 a.m. Eastern on your day of eligibility is when that opens. So just some notes about that. And just a note, if you're planning to park hop and planning to use MultiPass, all of your pre-selected MultiPass attractions must be in the same park. So if you're starting at Magic Kingdom and planning on hopping to Hollywood Studios, you have to book all of your pre-selected rides at Magic Kingdom to start. Now, day of, after you have redeemed that first ride, you can modify and adjust and tweak your plans after that. But for the pre-selection process, they have to all be at the same ride, or sorry, the same park. There we go. So keep that in mind as you're making your plan and looking ahead to make sure that everybody has the rides that they want. They all have to start at that same park. Now, at the parks, when it comes to ride selection, this is where things get complicated. Everything that I explained to you just now, pretty straightforward. But when it actually comes to booking the rides and looking at what your selections are and what your availability is, that's where it gets a little tricky. So there are 4 main parks, of course, at Disney World. 3 of them have their rides split into 2 different tiers. So Magic Kingdom, EPCOT, and Hollywood Studios all have that set up for their lightning lanes. And this only really matters with your pre-selection. They basically limit how many of the big popular attractions that you can get on your pre-selection so that everybody gets a little bit of everything. Now, Animal Kingdom is the odd one out. They are all one tier at Animal Kingdom, so you don't have to worry about picking, one from here and one from there when it comes to those ones. So what do those tiers look like, and what does that mean? So with MultiPass for your pre-selection, you can book 1 tier 1 and 2 tier 2 rides to create your 3 pre-selected attractions. Again, this is not talking about single pass. We'll get there in a moment. So for your multi-pass, for your pre-selection for Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and Epcot, 1 tier 1 and 2 tier 2. That being said, you could select 3 tier 2 if you wanted to at either of those any of those parks, but you just can't have more than 1 in tier 1. So something to keep in mind depending on your party's preference on what rides you're looking to ride at any of these parks. Now, later on, I am going to talk about kind of what I think is the best course of action when it comes to lightning lanes. But let's just talk about what the tiers look like for now. And then for each park, I'll give you kind of my strategy and my suggestion for your pre-booking. So for Magic Kingdom, let's start with the biggest one. This one's got the most attractions. It's got the most kind of planning when it comes to booking. So let's talk about Magic Kingdom. So for the tiers for Magic Kingdom, tier 1 is going to be Big Thunder Mountain when it reopens. It is currently down for refurb for the rest of 2025, but it is considered a tier 1 attraction when it's open. Jungle Cruise, Peter Pan, Space Mountain, and Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So you've got those 5 rides in tier 1 that you can select one of those for your pre-booking. Now, that does not mean that you won't be able to get one of those as a secondary option day of. They are harder to get, but not impossible. Now, for tier 2 at Magic Kingdom, you're going to find these rides: Barnstormer, Buzz Lightyear, Dumbo, Haunted Mansion, Small World, Mad Tea Party, Magic Carpets, Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, PhilharMagic, Laugh Floor, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Tomorrowland Speedway, and Under the Sea, The Voyage of the Little Mermaid. Longest name ever. So those are your tier 2 attractions. So for your pre-booking, those 2 are the one, or those, that's the category that you're going to be able to pick 2 out of for your pre-booking. So 1 tier 1, 2 tier 2s. That being said, this is where your strategy is really, really beneficial, because if you can get some of the bigger rides kind of already planned and pre-booked, then it's going to make your day at Magic Kingdom a lot easier. So, I'm going to talk about kind of two different approaches to each park. One if you've got little kids, and one if you've got older kids that kind of want maybe more thrill rides. So, kind of going to give you a little bit of both. And you can kind of decide how you want to mix and match. So, for younger kids, here's my suggestion, and here's what I would do. For your tier one, I would pick between Jungle Cruise and Peter Pan. So those are gonna be your top 2 choices for your little kids that are visiting. Um, and it's really gonna depend on which you prefer. Those rides are both very difficult to get, later in the day, or they can be, right? It's always gonna depend on the crowds, it's always gonna depend on how many people are using lightning lanes for any given day, but those are the 2 that you're gonna wanna look between for your little kids. Now, for your tier 2, I would do something like Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and Pirates of the Caribbean. Those are 2 of the most popular ones for that. So those are 2 of the ones that I would pick. You could also debate about adding like a Buzz Lightyear in there as well. Or if your kids like Haunted Mansion, that would be another choice as well. So kind of those 4 would be the suggestions for tier 2, and you're going to want to just pick whichever ones are most appealing to your travel party. So that is kind of your little kid advice for Magic Kingdom. For older kids, kids that are more thrill seekers, I would highly suggest for your tier 1 doing Big Thunder Mountain or Tiana's Bayou Adventure. A lot of people are going to say, well, what about Space Mountain? Space Mountain of the tier 1 rides tends to have the most availability later in the day. So I don't tend to book Space Mountain as a tier 1 for that reason. The other thing to really think about with your older kids, especially, and somewhat with your younger kids, is you may decide to rope drop. We've talked about rope drop and early entry. You may decide to rope drop one of the rides that are on that tier 1 list. Then don't book it and book something different. So if you're planning to rope drop, Space Mountain, you don't need to book it. But Big Thunder Mountain and Tiana's Bayou Adventure are both going to open at Park Open and not be open for early entry, which is part of the reason why I highly suggest those for your tier 1. Now, for your tier 2, for your older kiddos, there are not as many thrill rides on your tier 2. But I would suggest Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion. Those would be your 2 your best use of your pre-booking for your older kids at Magic Kingdom. So again, those are my 2 suggestions, but it's really highly going to depend on what your party is wanting and which rides most appeal to your travel group. So that's kind of Magic Kingdom in a nutshell. Here, after I kind of talk through all the parks, I am going to go through a tutorial and show you step by step how to actually physically go through and do it on the app. But we're just going to talk about kind of theoreticals here for a little bit before I get to that point. So that is Magic Kingdom, kind of 2 different strategies that I would suggest. Now, I will note that after you tap in for that first ride, you will be able to grab any tier ride after that. So I mentioned this earlier that the tiers really only matter for your pre-booking. After your whole party has tapped in, your whole party will then be eligible for your next ride, and it can be any ride from any tier after that. So that's what I was mentioning about something like Space Mountain. It's gonna have more availability later in the day because not everybody is on top of booking their next ride after they tap in. So that is a big key thing to getting the most out of your lightning lanes. So that's Magic Kingdom. Let's talk about EPCOT. With EPCOT, again, you have 2 tiers of rides that you can look at for your pre-booking. Tier 1 currently is Frozen Ever After, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Soarin', and then likely to be Test Track. Now, Test Track is slated to open summer in quotes of this year. We don't have an opening date. We don't have any information about it yet. So we'll see what happens, but we are anticipating Test Track being tier 1. I don't know for sure what they're going to do. So we'll have to wait and see uh kind of what happens with that and how that maybe shifts things at EPCOT. So when that information comes out, I will give you guys an update for that. But I'm going to go with kind of what is currently available towards the end of May 2025 for booking. So tier 1 is Frozen, Remy, and Soarin'. Tier 2 is the Pixar Short Film Festival, Imagination with Figment, Living with the Land, Mission Space, The Seas with Nemo, Spaceship Earth, and Turtle Talk. So that's your tier 2 options for that. Let's talk about my strategy suggestions here. For younger kids, it's really hard with EPCOT because of Frozen and Remy both being on that tier 1. Here's what I do know from all of my experience doing this. And I didn't really talk much about that, but I have a lot of experience helping people plan lightning lanes. I've been doing this for a while, so I have a lot of experience and I've seen a lot of things happen in the parks. So with my experience, Remy is a lot harder of a time to get for lightning lanes. What I mean by that is very rarely can you get a time later in the day after you've already started using your lightning lanes for Remy. Frozen is more likely, still pretty tricky, but much more likely. So I'm always going to suggest for your tier 1 to book Remy if that's a ride that you guys want to do, because your chances are better at getting a Frozen time later in the day, and Frozen tends to be a shorter wait than Remy in comparison. Not always the case. It's always going to depend on the day and the crowds, but overall, Frozen tends to be a shorter wait. Also, I would highly suggest rope dropping Frozen. If you are someone who wants to do it and you're using lightning lanes, book Remy and rope drop Frozen. So Remy would be my tier 1. For little kids, then for your tier 2, a couple options. You could do The Seas with Nemo. You could do Figment. You could do Spaceship Earth. Those would be my 3 suggestions to pick 2 of for your group, depending on what they would like to do. For older kids at EPCOT, again, I really highly suggest doing Remy for your tier 1 if that's something that they want to ride. Now, I know I didn't mention Soarin'. Here's the thing with Soarin'. Soarin', you can tend to find it at a lower weight more frequently than Remy and Frozen. And in the morning especially, you can tend to find it for the first probably hour to maybe 2 of park open, you can tend to find it at a lower weight. So I tend to just suggest rope dropping or like the second option in your rope drop if you go to Frozen first, then going to Soarin' second, or waiting and doing Soarin' later in the afternoon when some of the times have dropped because a lot of people have migrated out to World Showcase in EPCOT. That would be your time to look at Soarin'. So Soarin' is a little bit easier to do standby and much, much easier to get a time later in the day for. So with your older kids, I do suggest your tier 1 being Remy. And then for tier 2, I would look at something like Mission Space if you've got kids that are wanting to do that. It's a very controversial attraction because it can be a little intense. Green is the less intense side. Orange is extremely intense. So keep that in mind. And then after that, it's really your group choice. If there are people who enjoy something like Figment, Nemo, Living with the Land, any of those options are really great. So that's kind of my suggestion for older kids. Again, none of that included Test Track because we just don't know what's going to happen with that reopening and what tier it's going to be in. So I really can't speculate about Test Track until that kind of happens. So that is EPCOT in a nutshell. Let's move on now to Hollywood Studios. This is the 3rd park and the last of our 2-tiered parks. So again, Hollywood Studios is split into 2 tiers. Tier 1 includes Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Slinky Dog Dash. Those are all of your tier 1 rides, which That is a big list, and I'm going to talk here in a minute about some options for that. Tier 2 includes Alien Swirling Saucers, the Beauty and the Beast show, the Disney Junior show, the Frozen Sing-Along, the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular show, Star Tours, Tower of Terror, and Toy Story Mania. So those are all of your Tier 2 rides at Hollywood Studios. This park is a bear. It is so tricky and so it really just your success is really determined by this pre-booking. So let's talk about a couple things with this. Your younger kids, it's going to depend on height at this park a lot. So of your Tier 1 options, Runaway Railway is the only one that does not have a height requirement. Smuggler's Run is 38 inches, Rock and Roller Coaster is 48 inches, and Slinky Dog is 38 inches. So that is going to heavily influence what your Tier 1 booking is for your younger kids. Now, if all 4 of those are an option for your group, Slinky Dog has got to be number 1. It is the hardest multi-pass ride across all of the parks to get when it comes to your pre-booking. Even if you're quick on it, you're probably going to get an afternoon time, and that's okay for that one. But Slinky Dog, if that is a ride you guys are doing, that has to be your priority for your Tier 1 ride. Now, Runaway Railway, I know, is another really great option up there if you've got littles. That one is easier to get one of 2 ways. You can rope drop it very easily, or you will be able to pull a later time after you've started using your lightning lanes for that more easily than you will for something like Slinky Dog. So with little kids, either Slinky Dog would be your top priority or Runaway Railway if you are not either tall enough to ride Slinky Dog or not interested in riding Slinky Dog. After that, for your Tier 2 for little kids, I would do something like Toy Story Mania. Alien Swirling Saucers, that does have a height requirement of 32 inches, so keep that in mind. And then my other option for that would be like the Frozen Sing-Along. I don't typically recommend using lightning lanes for shows, but at Hollywood Studios, you have a lot of shows on that second tier. So it really can make sense for your group if you've got younger kids that can't do some of those bigger rides that have those height requirements on them. Now, for older kids at Hollywood Studios, this park is significantly harder to navigate with older kids. So again, Tier 1 has to be Slinky Dog. That is the hardest one to get. You've got to go for that one for your pre-booking when it comes to Tier 1. For Tier 2, I always suggest Tower of Terror and Toy Story Mania. Those are your 2 other best options for your older kids that are visiting the parks that want those thrills and enjoy doing some of those bigger rides. After that, you really just have to go in order of priority and see what's available as far as your next booking after you use your first at Hollywood Studios. That park is so tricky, and it's really frustrating because and I'll get into this more in a little bit, but lightning lanes are immensely helpful at Hollywood Studios, but only for a select little group of rides, which is a little frustrating when you're looking at getting the most money's worth out of your lightning lanes. So it's tricky. Like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. I'm going to go through Animal Kingdom, and then I'm going to give you guys kind of a walkthrough tutorial and look at the actual app and how that looks when it comes to booking both a 2-tier park and Animal Kingdom, which does not have tiers. So let's talk about Animal Kingdom. All of the rides that are included in Multi-Pass are all on one tier. So you can select 3 out of this whole list. So the ones that are included on MultiPass are Dinosaur for now until it closes after the end of this year. We don't have a set date, I don't think, yet for Dinosaur to close. So for now, it's on there. Expedition Everest, Feathered Friends and Flight Show, Festival of the Lion King show, the Finding Nemo musical, Cali River Rapids, the Kilimanjaro Safari, and Navi River Journey. Those are your attractions that are included on your multi-pass. So for Animal Kingdom, with your younger kids, my suggestions would be Navi River Journey, the Safari, and then either Lion King or Finding Nemo, whichever one interests you more. Look at the show times for that and see what lightning lane time makes the most sense for your group to try to attend. That will help you get a guaranteed seat as long as you arrive within your lightning lane window for that show. So for little kids, those would be my suggestions. And really, those are my suggestions because some of the other rides have height requirements. So if you've got littles that don't meet those height requirements, that's your best options for Animal Kingdom. For older kids, you are going to want to book, again, the safari. I always suggest booking the safari and booking it for as early as possible because you're going to see the most movement and the most action from the animals that live on the savannah. So you definitely want to book your safari time early in the morning. You can also get good rides if it's closer to dinner time, so 4 or 5 o'clock as well, if it's not too hot. It just depends. And then also for your older kiddos, I would book Expedition Everest, and then I would book, for now, Dinosaur. But once Dinosaur goes away, then you could look at something like Navi River Journey as a really fun boat ride option for your older kiddos as well. So that is kind of my suggestions for Animal Kingdom and the other parks before that. Now let's talk about how to actually physically book and what that looks like on the app. Okay, so let's talk about how you actually book. So, first thing to note is you're going to want to do the My Disney Experience app. This is the iPad version. It looks a tiny bit different, just the fact that this menu is normally at the bottom on your phone. So, you may see the little plus sign and home screen down at the bottom. Just keep that in mind. It's a little bit different. So, when you are booking your lightning lanes, now, right now, I have a trip coming up. So I have already booked some. You can see that it says right here, your experiences are booked. If you haven't, it will just give you a banner right here that says lightning lanes. So we're going to click this lightning lane passes, and it is going to bring us to typically not that page because you haven't booked any yet. It's going to bring us to a page that looks like this. This is going to be your calendar. So this is where I was showing you guys or telling you guys earlier that it will give you the price a little bit in advance. So I can slide out here as of right now all the way out to mid-June, and I can see what those prices are going to be for every park. If I just select this little here, I can see that on this day, June 12th, here are my price breakdowns for all of the parks. So that's the way to look ahead of time. Again, you can see it about 3-ish weeks out, but that is what that is going to look like. So I'm going to select a date that I know I'm eligible to book, but I don't have anything booked because it's not a parks day for me. So once I select my date, then down here, I can select my park. So let's look at, for example, I talked about Hollywood Studios being the hardest one to book. Let's look at Hollywood Studios. So for now, we're only going to look at our multi-pass options. We will talk about single passes in just a moment. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to hit continue. After that, it's going to ask who is included. I'm not going to scroll down because you don't need to see all the people on my list. But right now, it just has me selected. So I'm going to hit continue because that's who I want to book for. Here's where the tiers come in. You can see at the top, this is my tier 1. So select up to one of your 3 from this group. So I'm going to select Slinky Dog because, like I said, that one is the hardest one to book across all of property. Now I can scroll down. Oh, you can also see that grayed out these options up here because I'm no longer eligible to book those. That would happen no matter which of those top options I selected. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of a little bit foolproof with that, which is helpful. So then I scroll down here and I can see all of my other options. So I'm going to book like I am booking for my family. I have two kiddos. They are both thrill seekers. They both meet the height requirements for these particular attractions. So I'm going to select Tower of Terror and I'm going to select Toy Story Mania. Now you can see that once I got my three, these ones also grayed out. So it's not going to let you select more than three when it comes to those selections. So I'm going to hit continue. This is where it's going to give me my times. So this will auto give you whatever times are available. You can see additional options by clicking that modify time and selecting from there. So let's say I wanted to see what was available in the 5 o'clock hour. I have a 5, a 5:20, and a 5:40 available. I'm going to leave it at that 2:05, or I'm going to change it to 2:05, and you can see up here it changed. Let's look at Toy Story Mania. It gave me a 3 to 4. I'm going to check in here very quickly just to make sure. Now, it will likely give you the earliest time available. However, this system will not overlap lightning lanes more than about 15 minutes. So you could see that my lightning lanes, when it first gave me, I had a 2 to 3, a 3 to 4, and a 4 to 5. It's not going to let me overlap those for the pre-booking. Day of, you can overlap no problem, but the pre-booking selections will not let you overlap. Don't ask me why, it's just the way Disney did their system. So let's say I want to do, okay, I'm going to leave the 3 o'clock for Toy Story, so I'm just going to keep going after that. And now let's see, I want to look at my times for Tower of Terror. So it's giving me a 3:40. So you can see that I overlapped by about 20 minutes. That's about as much as it's going to give you when it comes to overlapping. So once I have selected my times, you can see up here, my timer has been going as I've been selecting. So I said that it will give you 5 minutes to make your time selections. So you will have 5 minutes with these rides. Now, that being said, if you're trying to modify times, those times will go fast. So I always say, and whenever I do it, I do exactly what I just did. So let's say I popped into this for the first time. I'm going to go modify. I'm going to look nothing earlier. Okay. I'm going to go modify. I'm going to look. Okay. I don't see anything earlier than that time. Perfect. I'm going to do the same thing down here. Nothing is earlier. Perfect. Okay. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and book. So it needs to be that quick, and you need to just push your times as early in your day as you possibly can. After that, I'm going to hit continue, and then I would pay. So that in a nutshell is booking a a 2-tier option when it comes to lightning lanes. Now, let's look at what Animal Kingdom looks like. Animal Kingdom is much, much, much easier. So I'm going to go same day. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to select multi-pass for Animal Kingdom. You can see for on this particular date, it's 16 per guest. I'm going to let that select just me. Again, you can scroll down and see your whole friends and family list underneath this eligible party option here. So you can see from here, they're all in one group, and it says select up to 3 from this group. Very easy. So I'm going to go through, and for my group, I would do the Safari, I would do Everest, and I would do Dinosaur. And again, after I select my 3, it's going to gray out those other options. I'm going to hit continue. And again, same thing. I'm going to look. Okay, 2 o'clock's my earliest time. Ooh, they've got a 2:40. Let's save that. And then Safari. Now, Safari is the tricky one because if you look, I'm actually going to move that one out because this is going to give me some of the last Safari times. My guess is Safari closes at about 5:45 or 6 this night because that's typical for Animal Kingdom and for the Safari. So I want to be able to ride it towards the end of the night for that particular ride. Normally, I would look and I would go, ooh, a 3:20, I want that because it's earlier, but not for the Safari. So it's a little bit of an anomaly with that one. And then again, I would hit continue, my payment options would pop up and I would hit pay. And then at the end, it would say like booking confirmed or something along the lines of that. Same thing again, up here, I have a 5-minute window for my times or for my rides, and then I can go in and modify my times as needed. So let's talk now about single passes. So everything we talked about up to this point is multi-pass. All of the rides, the way you book, all of that is all multi-pass. So what about single passes? So there are 5 attractions that are considered single passes at the Disney parks. 2 in Magic Kingdom, and then 1 in the other remaining parks. So the rides that are considered single pass, again, these are an additional fee on top of the multi-pass price. 7 Dwarves Mine Train at Magic Kingdom, Tron Light Cycle Run at Magic Kingdom, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at EPCOT, Rise of the Resistance at Hollywood Studios, and Avatar Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom. The thing about the single passes is you really just have to look at your budget and see what you think. And also, they all have height requirements. So you have to look at those height requirements depending on your travel party to see whether or not that's something that you want to go ahead and book or something that you want to look into. So those 5 rides are the ones that are on there. Now, as far as booking those, it's going to look almost identical as what it did for what we just looked at for multi-pass. You're going to go into the calendar, you're going to pick the date, you're going to select the park and the attraction that you want, select your time, go through and check out all that good stuff. So that part looks the same. Just a note that you can book those together, multi-pass and single pass, but remember, everyone that you're booking in any given transaction has to be booking all of the same rides, or else it will not work that way. You'll have to do it in different shifts. So for example, I booked earlier this week my lightning lanes for my upcoming family trip. There are 10 of us going. There are 9 of us that are going to be utilizing multi-pass. And I looked at everyone's options of what they wanted to ride, and I made our pre-selections for multi-pass that way. I had to do our single passes in separate transactions. So I had to do, like when we booked for 7 Dwarves, we had a different combination of our travel party that wanted that ride. Same with Tron, same with Guardians of the Galaxy. So all of my single pass rides for my particular situation were all booked as separate transactions because I had a different combination of people that wanted to ride all of those different single pass rides. But if you've got a travel party that you're all wanting to ride the exact same rides, it's much easier that way, unfortunately, because you can just go through with one single transaction for that. So keep those things in mind. Another really important thing that I want to kind of uh, end this section of the podcast and kind of go more into the Q&A section of the podcast is, if, let's say, for example, you all have a ride booked at 10:40. I'm going to use my trip as an example here. So if we look here, okay, my times for our Magic Kingdom day. I have Pirates of the Caribbean, 10:50 to 11:50. Let's say something happens. I have 9 people booked for this ride. Let's say something happens and 2 of them either change their mind or are late to the park or are at a different part of the park and not with us, and they don't end up getting to ride. For your first ride, it is extremely vital that everybody taps into that ride, regardless of if they are actually physically riding. That is a big flaw in the Disney Lightning Lane system that gets a lot of people having to go to see guest relations because their lightning lanes will not allow them to book their next attraction. So let me say that again. If everybody that is booked for your first ride only has to tap in to that first ride, regardless of if they physically ride it or not, in order to be able to open your eligibility for every ride after. Because what will happen is if, let's say, 6 of us tap in for Pirates and the other 3 either don't or we try to just cancel their time, the Disney system will not have viewed it as them tapping in, and it will not open them up to book a tier 1 ride next. Because it'll say they already have a tier 1 ride because they do. Tiana's Bayou Adventure is down here on that list. So it messes with the system if you don't do that. That is only true for the first ride each day. Afterwards, let's say something happened with Winnie the Pooh and 2 people decided they didn't want to ride it, you can just cancel theirs at that point. But the first ride has to be tapped into by everybody in your travel party in order to fully unlock your ability to book your next additional ride. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, it is one of the biggest flaws in the Disney system. And it's super frustrating because not everybody knows about it and Disney doesn't publicize it very well. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense when it comes to physically booking your multi-pass rides, booking your single pass rides, some tips and tricks, some do's and don'ts when it comes to booking those. I am going to move now into just a few little Q&As, and then I am going to open it up to my live audience who is here with me while I record live on TikTok, if they've got questions that I can help answer as well. But I'm going to throw out a few kind of FAQs, I guess, so to speak, some things that are kind of frequently asked that I want to go over before we end our time talking about lightning lanes. So the first question that I want to talk about is, can more than one person help book lightning lanes on the same account? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Disney does not limit how many people you can have logged into any Disney account at a time. And you can absolutely go in and kind of divide and conquer. So if you and a friend, or you and your spouse or your partner, or you and your teenager want to divide up the lightning lane purchasing on your account, you can absolutely do that. It will not mess with the system, and the system will not allow you to like double book something. It will let you know like, hey, you already booked that for the day, move on and do something else. So you can absolutely divide and conquer under the same account login for that. The other really big question that I know a lot of people ask is, should I book lightning lanes? And here's my biggest suggestions when it comes to lightning lanes. First of all, it really depends on your travel party. If you've got a group with a lot of littles and those littles are not accustomed to waiting in lines, it's probably a good idea to check the budget and see what you think you're able to afford. That being said, if I were to kind of rank the parks for lightning lanes as far as the one that I think you need it the most at, down to the ones I think you need it the least at, I would say, again, this depends on your travel party. So refer back to those tiers and those suggestions I was giving you earlier for little kids and older kids at each park and see how many of those rides you think you're going to want to do. But I would say at the top for your choice for lightning lanes would be Magic Kingdom at number 1 for me, because it's got the most rides and I feel like you can accomplish the most at Magic Kingdom and get the most out of your money that you're spending. So Magic Kingdom would be first for me. Hollywood Studios would easily be second because it has so many top thrill attractions that are very hard to get on without having lightning lanes. So Hollywood Studios would be number 2 for me. EPCOT would be 3. I don't think you necessarily need lightning lanes at EPCOT. I think if you can utilize rope drop, you're going to be fine with that. Or if you can utilize something like the single rider line at Remy, that is an option as well. We didn't really get into single rider lines because we weren't really focusing on that, but there is one at Remy that can help if your party is comfortable splitting up. I don't necessarily think you need them at EPCOT if you utilize your early park entry and kind of make the most of your plans according to your top priority rides. And then Animal Kingdom would be my bottom if I'm ranking them, simply just because, again, if you utilize early entry, you can get a lot done at that park, and there are some options as far as, like, Expedition Everest has a single rider line. The shows do tend to help with crowds, so some of the attractions don't get lines that are as long, and a lot of the attractions there have higher capacity, so they can get through lines more quickly. That being said, as far as the single passes, I really do believe that they're all worth it. Um, so again, the 5 single passes, Seven Dwarfs, Tron, Cosmic Rewind, Rise of the Resistance, and Flight of Passage. I do suggest looking at your budget to figure out those at a minimum, because those rides can eat up an entire half of your day at some of these parks. On really busy days at Animal Kingdom, Flight of Passage is 2 to 3 hours. Cosmic Rewind just recently went off of virtual queue. Its wait time has been consistently an hour, 2 hours when it comes to that. So being able to budget for those single passes can really save you time in the parks when time is very crucial. Um, as far as that goes. So that's kind of my answer, non-answer when it comes to should I book them and are they worth it? I do think they can be at specific parks. So that's kind of my take on that, if you will. Um, Another question that I get a lot is how does Lightning Lane work with the rider swap or rider switch options at Disney? And that is a really great question because I know it can be confusing. So if you don't know what rider switch is the process that they have at Disney where if you've got a kiddo who is too short or too scared or doesn't want to ride a certain attraction, you can see the cast member at the beginning. They will scan the, ticket of the person who is waiting with the child who does not want to or is not big enough or old enough to ride. The first adult will then go and ride the attraction. They will either wait in the standby line if they do not have a lightning lane, or they will go through the lightning lane to be able to go to the attraction. When the cast member scans the ticket of the adult who's waiting, that gives them access to the lightning lane line. So let's say, for example, we're trying to do Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. The wait is an hour. My kid's too short. They can't wait an hour in line anyway. I'm going to go take them to go do something else while my husband waits in the standby line. I'm going to get my card scanned by the cast member. So that way, after my husband has ridden, I will be able to go through the lightning lane line to access the ride faster and not have to wait an additional 60 minutes or more if it's gone up at that point. That's kind of how the system was set up to function. When it comes to lightning lanes, both of the adult groups that are riding the ride must have the lightning lane for the attraction. You cannot use rider switch if your second adult does not have a lightning lane and your first adult did. Okay, so keep that in mind as you are planning accordingly for that to happen. Where it gets a little tricky is, do you need to do rider switch if you're using lightning lanes? I say yes, simply because you may be at the end of your lightning lane window and you don't want for the cast member to say that you're now ineligible to go through the lightning lane line because your time is expired. So I always suggest going ahead and doing the rider switch. It takes less than 2 minutes to get that set up, even if you are using lightning lanes, just to be sure that you are still within that eligibility window. So that way the cast members don't have to do any overrides on their system and you can just go through as you're supposed to go. So I hope that makes sense when it comes to rider switch. Another question that I get often asked is how do the photos work with lightning lanes? So at the Walt Disney parks, you get with your multi-pass purchase, you get ride photos and attraction photos included. So anything that has a photo, or like some of them do like little video montages, anything that has that on the attraction, you are going to get included with that price. You do not get character meet and greets included with that price. So that's something to consider if you are looking to do lightning lanes. You get some photos, but not all. So if you're planning to do character meets, you definitely want to look into PhotoPass and Memory Maker. So just keep that in mind as well. The last question that I get a lot is, how do I modify my times? So let's talk about modification. So after you have booked your lightning lanes, this is what they're going to look like. Again, I'm just going to use this Magic Kingdom Day as an example. So let's say I want to modify my time for Winnie the Pooh. Let's see what happens. I'm going to click into it. And then down here, I should show you how I got here before we do that. A couple different ways that you can get to see your lightning lanes. The first is by clicking this up here. If you click that, it is going to take you back to that page that I was just at, and it's going to show you your list of everything. You can also click your little plus sign, and at the bottom here, it's going to show View My Genie Day and Tip Board. This will work the day of. So if I'm going to go here, this is going to show me the current day of, and then I'm going to be able to tap that My Day, and it's going to bring up my plans for that day of. So 2 different places that you can go. Sorry, that's not loading. It's taking a while. But 2 different places that you can go for that. So I'm going to go back this way because it shows me mine more easily since I'm not day of yet. So let's say I want to modify my Winnie the Pooh time. I'm going to click into the ride. Then it's going to pull up this little menu right here, and I'm going to click Modify Plan. Then it's going to take me to a screen that looks similar to the screen that we looked at before, where it comes to times, but a little bit different. So it's going to give me 2 different modify options. It's going to give me a chance to, or an option, sorry. It's going to give me 2 different options to modify. It's going to give me the option to change my time of my current ride, or it's going to give me the option to select a new experience. Keep in mind, if this is before you have tapped into your first ride for the day, it will still be limited by the tiers. So we talked about that earlier. If this is after you've already started tapping in for the day, it will not be limited by tiers. But let's say I just want to look at the times. So I'm going to click here, and it's going to then bring up my other plans that I have. And I'm going to click this little modify and see what other times are available. I'm going to select whichever time I want, and I'm going to hit this blue will light up and it'll say save new time. Now, if you don't see a time you want, you can simply just click this and click go back, and your time is still booked there. So until you hit that last confirm, it's not going to modify it for you. You have to go through like 2 more confirms to be able to get to that point. This also works for single pass rides. So let's look at, let's say, 7 Dwarves. Again, I'm going to tap the ride. I'm going to tap modify. Now, on occasion, you will get something that I know is going to happen once this loads. You will get this option where there's nothing that shows here. That means that there are no available times for it to modify to. With your single pass rides, it's also going to give you the option to modify to another single pass. So I can click down here and I can see, oh, I can modify to Guardians of the Galaxy at $245 for an extra $4 per guest. So you have a couple options when you see that. But if I go back to Magic Kingdom, I'm wanting to modify 7 Dwarves. There are no additional times, so I'm not able to modify it. There's also no times for Tron, so I'm not going to be able to modify it to that either. So I'm going to click back. Now, let's say the next day, I'm looking at my Cosmic Rewind time. I'm going to do the same process again. And then once it pulls up, it will look the exact same here. So it's telling me nothing else in this park is available because there's no other single pass. I have a 10:05. I can click in here and I can see that these are the times that are available. Again, this does not, even if I click a time until I hit save and continue, it's not going to modify that for me. So I can always close back out and my time is still there. I haven't adjusted anything because I didn't like the times that they had. So that in a nutshell is modifying your lightning lanes. So I know I had some questions here. How do the prices of lightning lanes correlate with crowds? It's so expensive the first week of June. Basically, anytime that Disney sees an uptick in ticket sales or resort stays, your prices are likely going to be higher for your multi-pass, unfortunately. So that is just how they do things. They make it more expensive when they know more people are gonna be in the park. They also do limit it, right? There have been days in the past where multi-pass has sold out. Single passes sell out very frequently. That is something very common. If I were to look on the app right now for tomorrow, can almost guarantee you that all of the single pass, all 5 of those, would be sold out for tomorrow. It does happen with multi-pass as well because they do limit how many people can use it. But the prices fluctuate. They go up when there are more people in the parks, unfortunately. So that's kind of how that works together. If you have a DAS pass, how does it work on booking rides? So, Kayla, the DAS is a completely separate system when it comes to booking rides. You can book one at a time on DAS, and it will give you your return time in the app. You don't select it. So, it's a completely separate system when it comes to booking rides through that disability access pass. And I did see the question earlier. Someone was asking if I am a travel agent. I am not a travel agent. I just truly enjoy helping people make the most out of their Disney vacations. So I help people a lot with like itineraries and lightning lane plans and kind of the course of action when it comes to what should I book and who should I book it for and things like that. So if you're someone that needs help with that, please reach out to us here at Mom Street. I am more than happy to help you with your particular group. I've been doing this for multiple years. I have been through the last, I think, 4 different iterations of lightning lanes and fast passes and what they are and how to do them and things like that. So please reach out if you are someone that needs help and guidance on where to go for that. You can always send us an email, momstreetusa@gmail.com, or you can find us on several different social media platforms at Mom Street USA. Reach out to us on there as well. And I am more than happy to help answer additional questions. If you've got like really specific questions that you need help answering, I'm happy to do that as well. That is not a problem at all. I really enjoy doing it, but I am not a travel agent. So I cannot book vacations for you, but I can certainly help with itineraries after you have booked. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Mom Street USA. Again, like I mentioned earlier, if you've got additional questions or need additional help, please feel free to reach out. Or if you've got topics that you'd like to hear us cover in future episodes, please reach out for that as well. When it comes to future episodes, our next podcast episode that we're going to be recording, we are going back to Universal again. So we'll be back with Duck and Jess. We're going to talk rides and shows at the Universal parks. So that is coming up next on our podcast episode. So with that being said, we have reached the end of this episode. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will catch you next week on Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.